All right, guys, it's about 11:02. So with that, I'll go ahead and get us started. First of all, good morning and thank you for joining us today. I'm Rob Bazzola. I'm Chief Operating Officer here at Mobius Partners. We appreciate each of you taking time today from your busy schedules to be with us. We know you have lots of things going on. We're excited to share some information on a topic that I'm sure for most of y'all is in the forefront of your minds, especially during these unorthodox times that we're dealing with today amidst the corona COVID virus pandemic. Things in the arena of security are constantly changing, and the current landscape of our environment makes it even more complex for us to manage. So today's conversation is going to center around today's cybersecurity threats and how do we establish a security posture within our organizations that really provides the most protection while allowing your business to operate with the utmost flexibility. We're going to spend a couple minutes in the beginning of this webinar to introduce folks to Mobius for those that might be on the call that aren't familiar with us. And then I'm going to hand over the call to James Morrison with HPE's Cybersecurity Office of the CTO. And he'll spend about 30 minutes or so covering what we consider to be some very insightful information related to cybersecurity. And then from there, James will hand it over to Scott King, who's our CTO here at Mobius Partners. And he'll spend just a few minutes highlighting the partnership that we have with HPE and our capabilities within the security space. And then we'll move on to questions and answers. And then from there, we'll take as much time as we need. So we hope this agenda will, meet your needs and is in alignment with what your expectations are at this point. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and share just some really high-level information about Mobius Partners. So, Mobius Partners, first of all, we've been around a long time. We've been operating here in Texas. We have locations in Houston, San Antonio, where our headquarters is, as well as in the Dallas-Frisco area. And we have a presence in Austin as well. We've been around since 2000, so we have a 20-year history working with folks just like yourselves, large enterprise customers. And in the most recent past, we've expanded that out to include mid-enterprise and small business as well. Now, our philosophy has always been one that's focused centrally, I should say, on the customer and applying the same level of urgency to your business that we apply to ours. One of the interesting things about Mobius Partners is that most of the folks that work here or that have been with Mobius Partners have also been users at some point in their career. And so we understand truly the challenges and the things that you experience day to day within your business. Who we are, once again, our philosophy is completely centered around the customer experience that you have. And to ensure that we have that type of environment and that we're able to always exceed expectations, we have a really structured group that supports everything we do for the customer. And so when you look at us, we have dedicated folks that sit in the account management arena, folks that sit in the service delivery side, and we have solution architects as well as the quarterback, if you will, for the relationship or the accounts that we have. Which is the account executive. But all those folks work hand in hand to ensure that everything from how we design and develop solutions all the way through the process of delivering and ensuring that it's delivered on time and within your expectations. There's a team that's dedicated that works on that. And we pride ourselves, obviously, on ensuring that we act just like we're a part of your team. Our relationships over the last 20 years have been longstanding, and we attribute that really to our focus that we have with our customers being a part of their team. We as an organization, obviously, if you've been a part of with Mobius Partners over the years, you know just the deep technical expertise and technical acumen that we bring to our customers. We invest heavily in that side of our business. Actually, our technical staff tends to exceed the number of folks that we have working from a sales perspective. And we think that's incredibly important as it relates to delivering value in a consultative relationship with our customers. And so as an organization, we're going to continue to invest in that and always bring expertise to the team in specific domains that your team might or might not have access to, but always ensure that that we're providing that to you all. We are incredibly focused on how do we take care of what it is that you need? And we think out of the box on every situation. There is not a one fit or a one solution fit type of situation for us. We are flexible, consultative, and we really do like to collaborate and work with our partners, our customers, to figure out what makes the most sense for them. And for those folks that are focused on, diversity of who supplier and vendor as well. We think this slide gives a great, a great illustration of what we do as an organization. I'm not going to read it for you piece by piece, but understand that there are specific domains that are in the green boxes that we focus on. At the same time, wrapping around all of that, security and analytics, strategic and consultative services, as well as managed services. So Scott will spend a little bit of time at the very end of this session going into more detail around the security analytics and the strategic services part. So with that, as promised, I wanted to give a very high-level overview of Mobius Partners. We weren't going to spend a ton of time on that. Scott will give a little bit more detail that might help you out. But with that, I'd like to introduce James Morrison with HPE. James is a distinguished technologist, within the cybersecurity office within HPE, as I discussed earlier. James spent about 22 years with the FBI as a senior computer scientist, and he was focused primarily on cybersecurity. He's worked on numerous national security and criminal investigations while he was there during his tenure. He was also a regional program manager for the FBI's computer science program. He also played a very critical role as an adjunct faculty member for the FBI, taught multiple classes at Quantico internationally, and continues that that process of knowledge transfer as a adjunct professor at Houston Community College. James was a member of the U.S. Air Force. He spent 8 years there and was a Unix administrator. He joined HPE back in 2019, and he shares his experience and knowledge in the business community with leaders just like you. So with that, I want to thank James and you all again for your time today, and I'll hand over the stage to James. So James, take it away.
Thank you for the time, and I just wanted to kind of give you all sort of a high level as to where we think things are going. As Rob said, I spent a lot of time in the FBI and in the Houston, I'm out of the Houston area, so I worked a lot with oil and gas and petrochemical companies and even with higher education throughout here and then SMB. So I kind of been across that realm for a while. I've done IT for a long time. I did desktop support. I've done engineering. I've done, of course, cybersecurity and investigations. I have an engineering degree, so I try to understand the technology that we're deploying and that other companies are deploying. But also I have an MBA, so I understand that we have to map that up against business risk and business environment. 6 months ago, would we have thought we were today where we are? COVID has really changed and transformed us, and I've started to call this the emergency IT transformation, the unplanned IT transformation. And I think prior to COVID, we probably saw 10 to 15% of workforces were working from home, and now that number is over 60%. It's going to be interesting to see post-COVID how that settles out. But I think a lot of companies are really looking at what they've done now and said, can we map this to the future? And will we allow more people to work from home? Was it available? What's also interesting, though, is that we've seen a huge change in the way remote workforces are deployed. I know a number of companies in town that they've taken their co-location services and they actually had to stand up their co-lo service in order to provide the additional processing power that they needed to their consumer or their employees at the edge. So when we talked about edge-centric, edge-centric was not, we didn't think of it that way. We didn't think of edge being our employees at the edge. We thought of the data being developed at the edge and developed through things like IoT and mobility and those kind of things. And I think 75% of the data that we thought we were going to see over this next years was going to be edge driven, not inside of our normal data center. So data's changing. We're seeing more cloud enablement. When cloud first started coming out, a lot of people kind of said, oh, I'm going to jump to the cloud. And they saw it as maybe a way of saving money. And I'm not so sure it's as much about saving money as always it can be, but it's about environment, and can I take the same customer environment or the same customer experience and push it out to all of my areas around the entire world, or across my entire enterprise. And so a lot of companies are deploying hybrid clouds, and they're looking at, how do I use this? How do I use applications that might be virtually driven? And because data is the game, right? How do I take my data? How do I use my customer data, and do more with it and use it for marketing? Because where data goes, security has to follow. And it's when we look at right now where we are with the COVID pandemic, our employees now are sitting out at the edge of our networks. Our networks may not have been deployed to support the number of workers we have, and so we're tuning up more VPN tunnels. We're putting up more Citrix gateways. We're looking at VDI type solutions, virtual solutions. We're trying to come into all this sort of what will work for us. Do we do an app? Do we set up some sort of virtual app type environment? But security, unfortunately, is somewhat chasing where we are being forced to operate. And so I think that's where cybersecurity's got a huge challenge with that. And I actually posted on my blog because of where are we going to be in 6 months. Because cybersecurity, we often see sort of this lag between, we see all these people attacking up front with phishing and denial of service attacks. But what about that person that's coming in below and actually getting some sort of deep, access into our network and is going to, deploy something in 6 months? So security is going to continue to be that challenge, because loss of function is the weapon. The bad guy knows, the hacker knows that if I can get into your network and I can cause you to not be able to use your data, you're more likely to pay me for it. And actually about a year or 2 years ago, Tropical Storm Imelda hit here in Houston, and it really caused a lot of damage out East Texas in the Beaumont, Orange, Port Arthur area. And right after that, we saw a very sharp increase in ransomware attacks directed at businesses that were in zip codes in that region of Texas. So the bad guy knows that, especially in the middle of a crisis, there's an opportunity maybe to make some money because people are compromised, people are distracted, people are not necessarily thinking, why would a bad guy do that? Why would they attack me? Well, the reason they would attack you is because you are compromised, because you are, somewhat distracted, and there's more of a likelihood that your company will pay, to get their data back should it occur in the middle of a crisis. All right, so understanding that, I've got to be able to protect against the new vulnerabilities. The new vulnerabilities may be your people, right? It may be, IoT type environments that we've pushed to the edge. People working from home networks. How do I deploy security, at the edge? How do I protect against that? Because a lot of people are using home computers, home laptops that are also being used for personal use at the same time that they're using it for corporate use. So we've got to look at this whole idea of all of these are vulnerabilities, right? And then how do I detect the intruder? So I've got somebody in my network. How long is it going to take me to figure out that they're in there? The average is 245 days is the median time that somebody's inside your network. So what intrusion detection are you using? Is it working for you? And one of the things I thought Rob was spot on with is that every one of you is an individual company, and every one of you needs to be able to have individual IT solutions that may be different. A lot of people come up to me and they'll say, "What do you think of product X?" And I'm like, well, I don't believe in a black box approach. One thing I learned in the Air Force, I was a systems troubleshooter, is the systematic approach. The way that software and hardware are deployed in a system makes it unique. And so it's very, very important to make sure that whatever we're doing, whatever we're deploying is working for me, and that I have processes in place that will help me there. Because recovery, whether we like it or not, there's no way to stop the ransomware attacks. There's just no way. It's becoming more and more likely that you're going to get hit. How am I going to respond to that attack? If I get hit with ransomware, can I segregate the damage or mitigate the damage and allow it to only infect one section of my network, and then I can recover from that? So we've got to know how long it's going to take me to recover, because the longer it takes me to recover, the more likely it is it's going to cost me money, right? And $8 million on average, that comes out to $20,000 a day if we're being actual down, or $143 per record lost. Cybercrime cost, right, $2 trillion in 2019. It's estimated to be as high as $6 trillion next year. Cybercrime is continuing to rise at pretty much an exponential rate, but our budgets are not really increasing at the same level. So it's very, very important to make sure that what we're deploying actually works inside of our environment. But there's also this idea that it's not always going to be an external attack that's going to hit you. The internal, we have to have something deployed that's also going to look at security internal to my network. The insider. We don't like to think that way, that we may have somebody inside our network that means us ill will, but it happens. What's interesting is layoffs. We saw that in the oil and gas environment. We had one company here in town that they announced layoffs, were going to happen next week. And I was like, well, why did you do that? Well, what ended up happening was that they ended up, people who they knew they were going to get fired, they ended up stealing data and actually causing an insider problem. So, data inside has to be protected, has to be, no matter what. This is kind of one of those, rhetorical questions. Can it be mitigated through innovation? Well, every IT company, every company believes the answer is yes. I can't eliminate the threat. I have to understand that, there are ways to mitigate that threat using technology. It's just having the right technology deployed. And that's our responsibility, and that's companies like Mobius as well, to make sure that we are actually, helping you mitigate that. Because proper investment, right? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we were talking about technology, we were deploying edge firewalls, very high-end firewalls, and high-end border routers. And so advanced perimeter controls were kind of where we thought. So it became this idea of the castle, and the interior. But that really hasn't worked in the long end game, and there's actually not a lot of value associated with right now. Right now, there's more value associated with things like user behavior analytics, security intelligence systems, machine learning, identity and access. These are the kind of things that we look at is, what is, first of all, the first question, and that's where I love, again, I got to listen first, right? I have to think, what are you trying to do? How do I help you get to the solution you want to get to and do the transformation? So making sure we deploy the right technology and don't fall into the idea of what I call shiny light syndrome, where somebody comes up and says, hey, I've got this really great product. That's great, but is that product what we need, and is it going to help us? So the holistic idea, the whole enterprise idea of security, we've always talked about people, process, policy, products, proof, all that on the left side, but we have to have an understanding of how am I going to protect my data? How am I going to protect my physical security? Because in the Bureau, we always said, if I get physical access to your data center, I win that battle, okay? So we have to know that it's physical security has to be kind of the bedrock of everything. I went to one company that had been hit with ransomware, and I was supposed to meet their chief security officer, and I showed up to the company, and there's nobody at the front desk. So I was like, okay, well, I was like, okay, let me see what I can do. So I walked into the next room, and it was a break room. Now I was in a full suit, because that's how the Bureau responds. And I said, you know what? We're going to walk through this place like we own it. And I walked through that. There was a guy there. He said, hey. I said, how are you doing? He didn't say anything. No one ever challenged me. Didn't have a badge on. I walked through the next room, and I walked into their data security closet. And I was sitting there at their closet when I found their chief security officer. I called him, and I was like, dude, I am literally standing at your servers. And he's like, well, we don't really think anybody's going to come in and do anything to you. Okay. That's just not the reality of this world we live in. So what is the HPE mindset of security? The HPE mindset of security is that first I got to protect the data. Now, data exists in 3 states. It exists at rest, it exists in flight, and it exists while it's in use. So we have technologies deployed for all 3 of those particular areas of the states. But we also got to make sure that the platform itself is secure. Can you trust that the data coming off my server is trustworthy? Is it resilient? And do I have the visibility and the control of that platform? And can I do all that without compromising performance? If security compromises your performance, people will disable a security product. We saw that for years with some of the antivirus products, where people would actually just disable it because it was slowing them down too much. We've got to make sure that we're doing all of this and keeping our same data levels, because security is only really as strong as the layer below it. Most security tools look at the apps, the OS, and the VM, but we don't see a whole lot of love put in for the hypervisor, the BIOS, and the CPU. So we've looked at, if I can build a chain of trust up the boot stack all the way into the application level, I now can say that I know that my data is secure. So the zero trust model is built from firmware out, and it's not just from the firmware out, but it's also what we looked at is we want to go, hardware, firmware, anything that's installed on that server when it is, deployed from our factory needs to be protected. So that should something happen to it, we can actually notify you that, hey, somebody's loaded we won't say even a malicious software package. They've loaded something not normal or out of the realm of what we wanted. Because the other idea is as we push data to the edge, we're having more data centers, we're having more clouds. So what if I could tie all of my servers together and actually get security that's tied at the server level, at the hardware level, across my entire enterprise? And that's been the HPE idea. And then when we tie that into the HPE ARUBA product, now what we end up doing is we get this secure fabric where we have something with ClearPass and we have the policy enforcement firewall. And we can actually, first of all, I have to have visibility into your network, right? I have to be able to look at the security and say, hey, and I don't care whatever the product is. I've talked to a lot of companies about their zero trust products. If your zero trust product cannot detect when somebody plugs in a new device, is that really useful to me? Shadow IT is something that we will all fight against till the end of our days, because people will say, you know what, I don't want to wait to deploy a new, whatever the new whirlywig is. They want to deploy that camera, they want to deploy that computer, they want to deploy whatever device, and so whatever security products I'm using have to be able to first look at a new device, and the first question should be, I don't allow it to do anything until I identify what it is. I have to have visibility. Once I know what it is, then I can start to authenticate it and define its data paths based upon that, about what it is. If it's a web camera should have very particular, patterns of data and how that data should be allowed to flow. But it also has to be contextual. So now think about, I'm sitting at home and I'm sitting on my HP provided laptop. Is it different is my current different if I'm sitting at an HPE office? Well, yes. The context that I'm actually sitting at my computer is different. Well, what if I'm not at home? What if I'm out at the airport or I'm out someplace else? The context of where I am is just as different as what I'm using to access my network. So also what we're looking at is we've got to make sure we have some contextual awareness of where my user is accessing and what they're accessing. And that's where user analytics come in, because in general, whether we don't think about it, we all follow the same kind of process of what we do in a day. And if you mapped how much data people access across the entire, their entire time, they access about the same amount of data. They also access the databases in a random way, right? So if let's say I have a database, and I'm like a medical database, I'm not accessing A, B, C, D, E, F, right? I'm accessing my data randomly because the stack of paper that I'm actually processing is random. So having an awareness also that my security product says a sequential accessing of data isn't proper either, because that usually means somebody is trying to traverse my entire network and either copy off my network or do something, copy off my database. So it's very important to make sure with ClearPass that we have device discovery, access privileges, authentication, all of this tied into one product. So the other thing we've looked at is that this is where we've taken a look at how do I secure VMs, right? We've had a lot of vulnerabilities in the VM environment, and they were just simply because the way VMs work is they share resources. You might share cores, you might share memory, you might share hard drives, but in the standard cloud operation, those things are all a little muddled together. And we've seen some malicious activity where people have been able to actually scrape data off of a VM because of that overlay. So we've actually created a VM isolation where each VM has its own firewalled resources, and there's no way for a bad guy to, to exploit that. So the Silicon Root of Trust. The other thing we've done is with Silicon is that we've worked not just with Intel, which was the particular product, but we've also worked with AMD. And HP has tried to stay somewhat agnostic in that environment. Some people, feel that the AMD has, more security. Some people feel Intel. And so we work with both of those hardware companies to try to have products that accentuate what their particular models are. And so with AMD, we've worked through their secure processor. We've got a number of offerings through their EPIC. processors that will be coming online. In addition, we've been working with insurance companies, and one thing insurance companies are always looking at is what is the risk. When you go out and buy cyber insurance, and those of you that have bought cyber insurance can know this game. One of the hardest questions for an insurance company is how much should I insure you for? And so sometimes it's a guess. And so what we did was we went to actually an insurance company called Marsh, and Marsh was developing a thing called the Cyber Catalyst program. And the Cyber Catalyst program wanted to look at different products and decide whether or not those products actually helped reduce cyber risk. For example, does it matter what server you buy? Some companies would say that a server is a server is a server. Well, we didn't feel that was the case. So through this, Marsh asked a lot of different companies. Over 150 products were given to them, and they evaluated them. And of those 150 products in 2019, 17 were designated as actually being able to help reduce cyber risk. So what that means is that if you have these products deployed in the majority of your products, you will actually get a positive benefit on your cyber insurance policies. So there's only one hardware product on there, only one server. That's the HP Silicon Root of Trust. And then we also have the ARUBA Policy Enforcement Firewall. But these are products that are, definitely recognized by the insurance company. That's the end of my slides. I think Scott's coming up next after me to talk to you about some additional stuff. Thank you very much.
Hey folks, yeah, Scott King here with Mobius Partners, CTO with the company. Just going to take the next 5 minutes or so. We'll leave some time for some questions to follow that, to just drill down on areas of expertise that we have here at Mobius that can help you work through some of the challenges James went through today. In many cases, leveraging the HPE solutions that they're bringing to market to address these things, as well as other relevant solutions in the marketplace that address these needs. So appreciate your time. I wanted to refer back, not visually here, but just kind of through the discussion, refer back to the enterprise security reference architecture that James covered. If you look at that or go back and review that, you'll see that our areas of expertise here at Mobius align very well with that, all the way at the foundational level from a physical security perspective, all the way up to securing the infrastructure, applications that are running on that infrastructure, all the components in between, whether that's securing your VMs or your operating systems. So really that full stack is where Mobius can really help you out, not only just from a technology perspective, but more importantly from a process perspective, and organizing around it, making sure that your staff is trained, and providing the education pieces as well. So really covering that for full circle for our customers. We do this in a very, our approach has always been to kind of take a technology agnostic approach. So we're not going to come in, leading with any one vendor solution, as James had talked about. It's really a full solution or full system that has to work together to meet your needs, right? So we'll take a look at that. In many cases, if you have challenges in some of these areas, whether that's endpoint security or application security, pen testing, a number of these services that we offer, we're going to take a look at, what does it look like today? Assessments are important, right? So offer an assessment and come in and get a good understanding of current state, where the challenges are, maybe gaps, and then make recommendations on how to fill those gaps. And in those cases, if there are technology gaps, then we would suggest maybe some that we've established partners with that are best of breed in the industry. And you see some of those represented here on the slide that we're showing. But that's generally the approach that we'll take, at a high level. Again, you see the areas of expertise from a security perspective, and then the services that we offer that align with that. And then you can also see here, where we've had success stories and references that can prove out just our capabilities. And as many of you know, on the webinar here today, existing customers, we tend to work with the largest enterprises, and even today we're over the last couple of years kind of filling a need for some of the smallest companies out there. So really the full spectrum of customer size as well as industry verticals and those kind of things. So lots of expertise in a number of different areas. So I wanted to touch on that as well. So moving on, one of the things that's relevant here is, from a strategic perspective, Rob reviewed kind of the overall solutions here at Mobius, and I'll get back to that after this slide here, but really wanted to focus on, from a strategic services consulting perspective, the areas that we can help, in the context of security, right? And you see that the area of expertise, kind of at a higher level here. So, managing a security program that's going on, around maybe, changing up the way you go about validating application security, right? So really that entails a lot of different projects, a lot of different touch points within an organization. So helping manage that, obviously the individual projects that could be a part of that, providing resources to our customers to help work through it. Obviously, security expertise is thin out there, right? So helping with fulfillment from a staff aug perspective, leveraging our internal resources as well as the partnerships we've been able to establish. We can, definitely work with you along those lines. But most importantly, I think here, and a strategy that we've employed at Mobius is many times there's managed service offerings out there where they're pretty canned by nature, right? They're structured. They provide specific deliverables, and many times, they'll meet 80% of the need for our customers, but they're still not the total solution and fall short of, meeting the needs. So what we've been able to do here is really, again, going through that assessment process, identifying gaps, and not only offer a solution that the customer can just take over and continue to operate after it's deployed, but also offering that potentially as a managed service where Mobius takes over the day-to-day operations and gives you that option, so you can focus on what's important for your business and not have to have retain those skill sets and those kind of things. So looking at that from a value add perspective from Mobius partners. So I wanted to point out that here today as well. And again, these case studies are relevant to the areas of expertise around some of the strategic services that we're working with our customers on today. And finally, just going back to the quick review that Rob did earlier, we talked about some of the, drill down a little bit on the areas of expertise around security and analytics and strategic services. You'll see similar capabilities across these other four main pillars that we go to market with at Mobius Partners. We've got a long legacy. Rob talked about 20 years of existence in the data center, so still very strong for us. Obviously, the cloud solutions being more and more relevant today. Building out our capabilities there and helping customers, when it makes sense, move to the cloud and do the evaluations and make sure that all the things that the experiences that they've had in their data center through the years that they would get in that, kind of moving to the cloud from an operational perspective as well. DevOps and observability, looking at more helping customers out from, improving time to market of new services, right? Application delivery, making sure the applications are functionally working to meeting the requirements of the business, performing to meet expectations, and then delivering the services to the business, from a availability and a performance expectation. So those things kind of reside there. Lots of years of experience helping customers get that level of visibility so they can continue to meet the demands of the business. And then most relevant today, digital workspace, right? Many of our customers having to move to a remote workforce model and leveraging, leveraging, virtual, end user computing type of approaches, getting people moved to the house, the challenges that James came up with around securing those environments and making sure that the devices that people are trying to connect with are secure, ensuring their access is accurate, right? That they've got the right access and they are who they are. And then authorizations and authentication comes into play as to, once they have been identified and their device is approved to connect, then what do you get access to at that point in time? And that really goes back to the HPE ClearPass solution and a lot of traction with our customers in that, and helping them kind of evolve where they have been in the past and where they are today to meet these new challenges. So that's at a high level, what we're up to here at Mobius. Would love to engage in some further conversations. You can check out more detail on this stuff on our website, mobiuspartners.com. And with that,
and we do have one question. What are some of the skills, certifications, experience required to be able to go deeper into cybersecurity?
This is James. I would say, so here's what cybersecurity is kind of in a funny place right now, in that you're starting to see degrees just starting to come up. So some colleges are offering cybersecurity 2- and 4-year degrees. University of Texas San Antonio has been one of the early ones to do that. Lone Star College is now offering a cybersecurity. But I tell people that the degrees are interesting. I don't think they're quite there yet. But skill sets, Python, very much as Python is probably the king. Seeing people using Ruby programming, even some people still use Perl. There's not a lot of it, so you want to make sure you have that. I would say starting with certifications. Start with the CompTIA ones. A+, Net+ are still needed. Security Plus starts there, but SANS is actually somewhat king. They're expensive. SANS.org has a lot of really great cybersecurity, programs. And then certified ethical hacking isn't a bad thing. You'll see some boot camps. I know in Houston we have a boot camp that Rice University, I think, offers one that's like a week long. It wasn't horrifically expensive either, but and then experience. What I tell people, if you really want to get into cybersecurity, go find a penetration testing company in your area and just say you want to see what they do, and just shoulder surf them. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on, I tell people, like, download Kali. There's the Kali instance, Kali Linux. They've got a lot of great tools inside there, and then just learn those tools. I've set up, I would set up my own network. You can set up a VM network type thing, where you can, actually start hacking yourself. Just don't hack outside your network, right? So that's where I would start.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that, and James, you touched on it, was just there's some boot camps that are out there that you could go. There's a week, 2 week long, where they can take multiple resources if you're building out a security operations team or something, and enable those, go through the process, understand how how a specific company would go about implementing threat detection and response to that, and then get groups of folks through these boot camps at a time, and give them the foundation skills they need.
There are some really neat, you'll see every so often they'll have online, there's some online cyber games that they play. Get into those, learn them. Even if it's the first time you've done it, it's a good place to start. I mean, digital forensics. Well, and first of all, cybersecurity is, I kind of break it up into like 4 different groups, right? So, you talk about ethical hacking. That's kind of the pen testing side, the red team. Then there's the blue team, right? The defenders. Then there's policy. And I have a lot of friends that work in the policy side. And then you have on the back side, you have the more of the CISO side. There's a whole lot of people out there that have that. There's some great groups. I guess ISSA is one of them. There's a whole lot of groups to get involved in too. So yeah.
Good question. Anything else out there, Liz? Or?
I do not see any other questions. I just wanted to mention that James is in Houston, so once things open back up, if you're interested in having him come visit your site, or we can set up an executive briefing for your company. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us.